I honestly love you, Olivia Newton-John. My Livy, from the day we met until the end. Some words get badly misused, and soulmate is a great example. I know there are people who appear willing to describe somebody as their soulmate if they merely get on quite well. But if I've ever had a true soulmate in the course of my long life, in music and in show business, it was Olivia Newton-John. I first met Livy in around 1969. She had been born in England but grew up in Australia, another of those 10-pound bombs. She returned to England in the mid-60s to try to launch a music career. At the end of that decade, she formed a female singing duo called Pat and Olivia with an Australian friend, Pat Carroll. I remember seeing them singing on a TV show. Pat was also a dancer, so she had choreographed their dance routine. They were two gorgeous women with fabulous hair. To cap it all, they could actually sing in tune, so naturally I was interested when Peter Gormley told me he had taken them under his wing and was to manage them. "Oh, what are they going to do first?" I asked him. "I don't know," Peter said. "Do you want to use them as your backing singers?" "Yes, please." I was about to do a short tour of the Far East and thought that they would be perfect for it. So Peter introduced me to Pat and Olivia. We had a lovely chat, and we headed off to Japan together. We were also lined up to play some dates in Germany. Pat, Olivia, and I got on famously from day one. They were both such fun, sunny, easy-going people to be around. Livy had this great Aussie accent, "G'day, Cliff," and a smile that would light up a room. She also had this exuberant, loud, happy laugh, the sort that made you join in as soon as you heard it. Olivia and Pat told me that they liked my good manners. I wasn't quite sure what they meant at first, and asked Olivia to explain. "Well, if you're driving me in your car, Cliff, when you park, you always jump out of the car and run around to my side to open the door for me," she said. "You're the only guy I know who does that." "Really?" That was second nature to me. My dad had taught me to do it. Likewise, if I walked down the pavement with a woman, I always took care to walk on the outside in case a car drove through a puddle and splashed their clothes. I still do. Dad had drummed that into me as well. "There's more," laughed Livy. She and Pat also liked that when we went for dinner, I stood up if one of them went to the bathroom, and did the same when they returned. We had one meal with the band, where I was the only guy doing it at the start. By the end, every bloke at the table was jumping to their feet. I still do that today as well. Again, it's just the way I was brought up. If a lady leaves the table, stand up as she goes. Maybe some women today may not like it, or think it implies they're the weaker sex, but I would certainly never mean it that way or want to offend anybody. For me, it's just being respectful and polite. Olivia, Pat, and I had a great time on those tours. Our voices worked like a dream together, and we had such a laugh. During a show in Germany, I noticed that a lot of male members of the audience were constantly gazing past my left shoulder, and when I looked behind me, I saw why. Pat and Olivia had moved their mics closer to the front of the stage, and they were doing some great dance moves. So, the next night, unknown to them, I had their mics moved to behind the grand piano. When I was introduced, I came on all smiles and opened the lid of the piano. They disappeared from view. Well, I let my glamorous backing singer stew for 30 seconds or so and then put the lid back down. Let me tell you, we have laughed at that episode so many times over the years. Pat had to go back to Australia for a while because she had some visa issue. While she was there, she married John Farrar, the guitarist and singer who was to play with Hank and Bruce as Marvin Welsh and Farrar. And when everyone was back in England, Olivia was to have her own romance with one of that band. Livy began dating Bruce Welsh. They were two of my favorite people, so if they made each other happy, I was pleased for them. And those two were already an item in 1970 when Olivia began appearing as a regular special guest on my It's Cliff Richard TV show, along with Hank Marvin and Eunice Stubbs. This came because Livy had made a new single and Peter Gormley suggested she might perform it on one of my shows. Of course, well, I've often joked since that Olivia came on for one show and stayed for 8. I just couldn't get rid of the woman, I laugh. But believe me, I didn't try. Because Olivia was natural for telly. She exuded that same natural, ingenuous positivity as she did in normal life. Her upbeat nature lit up the screen, and everybody on the program loved her, as did the viewers. It was no surprise that her musical interludes became one of the weekly highlights. It was Peter Gormley's idea that Olivia should sing Bob Dylan's If Not For You on the show, and it was a very good one. I've never been a huge Dylan fan, but it was one of the rare things he'd written that was actually a pop song with a tune, and Livy brought it to life. She turned it into a blinding ray of sunshine. It was such a winning number, and her record label naturally wanted to put it out as a single. Bruce and John Farrar produced it together, and it began flying out of the shops. It zoomed up the charts to number 7 in Britain and was a big hit in America, a number 1 on the Billboard Easy Listening chart. This was the start of an exciting time for Olivia when she really broke through. In Britain, she had big follow-up hits with Banks of the Ohio and a country and western song by John Denver, Take Me Home Country Roads. Then, in 1973, she had a top 10 hit in the US with Let Me Be There, a song that also won her a Grammy and was written by a former Shadow, John Rostill, who had replaced Licorice Locking on bass in my band in 1963. Livy was suddenly a big star, but sadly her relationship with Bruce was not to last. They broke up after 2 or 3 years. It must have been difficult for both of them when the relationship ended, and it was certainly sad for all of us when they split up. Because Olivia and I had such a natural chemistry on my TV show, the newspapers would sometimes speculate that we had something going on. We didn't. We were just really, really close friends. We loved each other, but we weren't in love, in a romantic sense. And that was why we could be really, really close friends. In any case, everyone was in love with Olivia. That was just the effect that she had on people. Men would go weak at the knees and tongue-tied, and women loved her fun nature and wanted to be her best friend. The attraction was her naturalness, I think. People just fell over themselves to be near her. It was the same on stage. Olivia was a very attractive and sensual performer, but a lot of her appeal was that she wasn't trying to be aggressively sexy. She'd wear a demure, buttoned-up dress and look sexier than Madonna, say, in her giant pointed brassieres. I guess Livy just knew that less is more. Livy and I stayed thick as thieves as she carried on having hits both in Britain and the US in the early 70s. And in September 1974, she came on the It's Cliff Richard show again. She sang a song that was to change her life and catapult her into superstardom because it went to number 1 in America. I Honestly Love You is my favorite out of all of Olivia Newton-John's songs. John Farrar produced it again, and it is a masterpiece. It has an incredible, smooth flow throughout. The lyrics are so poignant, and Olivia's voice is crystal clear as it rises from a whisper to ring out like a bell. It's unbelievable, as I'm sure you agree. People underestimate what a good singer Olivia Newton-John was. Critics would sometimes carp and say she had a small voice. What does that even mean? Who, out of all of us, had a big voice? None of us were Pavarotti. Olivia's singing was always impeccably in tune, and after vocal coaching, it was even stronger. Ironically, it was the quality that made Olivia so attractive that led some people to underrate her. Because she had the image of a smiley, happy-go-lucky girl next door, critics got her wrong and thought she wasn't a serious artist. Well, I reckon a #1 in America was a good way to put that misconception right. Olivia knew how to use her voice to convey emotion and passion. She might have sung softly, but it had a powerful impact. I Honestly Love You was a song about love not working out, that ached with meaning. I think the nearest I have to a song like that is Miss You Nights. They have the same feel and yearning. After that huge hit, Olivia moved to live in California. I missed her, and yet the distance didn't damage our friendship. We talked on the phone all the time, and every time I was over there, I'd visit her. When I did my 1976 interview tour for I'm Nearly Famous and Devil Woman, she threw a party for me. The wonderful thing about Olivia was that despite her huge success in America and the fact she was world famous, she never changed. She was always exactly the same each time I met her. That big smile and "G'day, Cliff," and totally unaffected. And that was just as true after she had had a huge movie break. When Olivia told me that she was going to star in Grease with John Travolta, I was delighted for her. It sounded a fantastic project for her, plus a musical that was set at the birth of rock and roll. Talk about right up my street. And when the finished movie came out in 1978, the world went crazy for it. Grease could hardly have had a bigger impact. When it was released, it was the highest-grossing film musical of all time. It received 5 Golden Globe nominations, including one for Olivia as Best Actress. Her duet with John Travolta, You're the One That I Want, was #1 for 9 weeks in Britain. Extraordinary! Both You're the One That I Want and Olivia's follow-up solo single from Grease, Hopelessly Devoted to You, were written by our mate John Farrar. Largely due to them, John is one of the 20 best-selling songwriters of all time. I told the story in The Dreamer of how, to my huge shame, I never got around to seeing Grease when it came out. I can't even imagine now why that would be. In fact, I didn't see it until Livy asked me to accompany her to the London premiere of a 20th anniversary reissue of the movie in 1998. I didn't want to tell Olivia that I'd never seen it, but I was so impressed by the film that I accidentally blew my own cover. As she and I left the screening, I excitedly told her, "Wow, that was so much better than my expectations." Oops! Olivia looked at me as if she should be cross with me, but she really wanted to laugh. Expectations? You had seen it before, hadn't you, Cliff? No, I admitted, and we both fell about. I was so blown away by Grease, largely because Olivia was so amazing in it. She had really been an unknown quantity as an actress when they had hired her for that huge role opposite John Travolta. Sure, a lot of singers can also act, but can they act well enough to carry off a leading role in an A-list movie? Well, Livy could, and then some. She was totally convincing as Sandy, the sweet and wholesome Australian teenager who moves to America, enrolls at Riddell High School, and falls in love with John Travolta's bad boy rock and roller, Danny Zuko. The two of them had an amazing on-screen chemistry. It was inspired casting, and I think one reason it worked was Olivia's own public image. Because she was seen as a naive girl next door, it made her believable as the innocent, unworldly Sandy. And her transformation at the end of the film into a black leather-wearing, gum-chewing vamp, all the more spectacular. After that huge box office success, Hollywood naturally very quickly asked Livy to make more movies. She signed up to star in a musical film fantasy, Xanadu, in 1980. Its theme tune was to be a UK #1 for her. She was shooting the film when she put in a transatlantic phone call to me. "G'day, Cliff," it began, as usual. "Look, I'm making this movie, and they want to release a single from it, but there's a problem." "Oh, really?" I replied casually, thinking, I know what might be coming here, and I hope I'm right. "My co-star can't sing." "Oh, no, poor guy," I said, trying and probably failing to hide my delight. In truth, I was almost punching the air. "So I want to ask you a favor," Olivia continued. "Would you sing it with me?" Livy said that the song was called Suddenly and was written by John Farrar, and that was enough for me. I normally have a hard and fast rule when it comes to singing duets. Whether they're with Elton John or Van Morrison, I have to hear the song. I have to like it. Well, this time I broke my own rule. "I'd love to do it," I told Olivia. "Just tell me when and where." Well, when was a few days later, and where was in someone's garage in Los Angeles. John Farrar rigged up a small studio in his engineer's garage, and we did the song right there. It was a lot of fun. We had to abort a couple of takes due to the noise of huge trucks thundering by, but the sessions went really well. And the song was great. It reminded me yet again just how well Olivia's and my voices melded together. On Suddenly, they just seemed to flow into each other utterly effortlessly. Please forgive me, but at the risk of being immodest, I genuinely believe it is one of the best male-female duets ever. Suddenly went top 20 on both sides of the Atlantic, and even jeopardized my anonymity in America. Because I never broke in the US, I can walk around unrecognized. But after Suddenly hit big, I bought a shirt in a New York clothes store with my credit card and found the sales assistant staring hard at me. "Excuse me, but are you the Cliff Richard?" he asked. "Yes," I confessed, "but how do you know me?" "Oh, I'm a big fan of Oliva Newton-John." Olivia married in 1984 and became a mother to Chloe in 1986. She and I carried on talking regularly and meeting up whenever we could. In 1992, the two of us were in Monaco to appear at the awards show. We sang Suddenly together and then had dinner on a boat. It was a terrific evening. But the following morning, Olivia called me up, sounding notably more subdued than usual. She got straight to the point. "Cliff, I've seen a doctor. He's got my test results, and he's just called and given me the diagnosis." She said, "I have breast cancer." It was devastating news, and yet the way that Livy tackled her disease was so typical of her. She threw herself into her debilitating treatment, and while she naturally had to pull back from her normal showbiz activities, she made an album about what she was going through. Olivia recorded Gaia, One Woman's Journey, chronicling her disease and her fight to overcome it. She wrote all the songs herself with titles like Why Me and Not Gonna Give In to It, and co-produced the album. It was intended to help women going through the same thing, and I'm sure it did. I was so proud of her. At the end of her treatment, Olivia was declared in remission and clear of cancer, but she was still keeping a low profile in 1995 when I was getting ready to star in my theatre show of Heathcliff. So I decided to call in the favour that she still owed me from Suddenly, and coaxed Livy a little more back into the limelight. I needed someone to sing with me on a single, a duet between Heathcliff and Cathy, to promote the musical. It was called Had to Be, and Olivia was the only person I had in mind for it. She agreed straight away, and we recorded in John Farrar's home studio, and Olivia nailed it first time, as always. Olivia had carried on making records, but she hadn't toured for 15 years or so. At the start of 1998, I was celebrating 40 years in show business with a few dates in Australia. So I decided to see if I could do something about that. I asked her to be my special guest, sing a few songs of her own and a duet with me. Livy seemed a little startled at first. I can't do it. I haven't sung live in years. But once I talked her round, she absolutely loved it. Our dates went great, and when they'd finished, she went off on tour with one of Australia's biggest stars, John Farnham. Then she did a big tour on her own. You couldn't stop her. By now, Olivia was in the position where she could pick and choose what she did, and she did some interesting projects in the 2010s. She made movies, appeared in US TV shows, including Glee, and performed at Sydney Opera House with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. She really seemed to be living her best life. In 2013, her cancer came back. Olivia kept it low profile this time, but she kept us in touch with how she was doing, and she beat it again. But things looked more ominous in 2017, when it returned for the third time. By now, her medics told her that it had spread to her lower back and progressed to stage 4. Yet she would not let it beat her. On the phone, she was the same upbeat, cheery Livy as ever. "G'day, Cliff." She didn't complain about the pain she was in when we hung out. And in 2019, she signed up to a fun live project, reuniting with John Travolta for 3 Grease-themed shows at open-air theaters in Florida. These were to be events where the T-Birds boys gang from the original cast led the audience in sing-alongs of the songs from the movie. Fantastic. I happened to be in Florida just before the shows, and Olivia invited me to go to lunch with her and catch up. Well, I always loved one-on-one time with Olivia, and we had a terrific time as usual. At the end, we were just saying goodbye when Livy asked me, "Oh, one more thing, Cliff. Will you join me, John Travolta, and some of his team for dinner tomorrow?" And I jumped at the chance. I had no idea what to expect when I met John Travolta. I'd always figured, well, if Olivia likes him, he must be okay, because, for all her niceness, Livy didn't suffer fools. Well, John was phenomenal to get to know. The absolute epitome of charm. I've rarely met anybody that famous who has stayed so resolutely ordinary. We met at a restaurant, and John was completely bald. He didn't have a hair on his head, and yet he was stunning. He looked so masculine, I remember thinking, if I ever lose my hair, I hope I can look like that. And he had absolutely no side to him at all. He was bowing to Olivia at the table and making her laugh. We all enjoyed that dinner so much that the time just flew by. We had such a good laugh. I could certainly see why Olivia held John in such high regard, and now I agreed with her. Even so, when one of his management team gave a speech at the table about the two of them, I made a cheeky interjection. "Well, John is Olivia's best friend," the guy said. Her second best friend," I corrected him. Everybody laughed. The day after that dinner was the first sing-along Grease show. I had a prior commitment, so I couldn't go, which was a pity, but I saw footage on the local news of them arriving at the theatre. Olivia looked radiant as always, and John had, overnight, sprouted a full head of hair, a Danny Zuko quiff no less. Wow, now that was what you call a good wig. It looked totally natural. Yet in recent years, it was evident that Olivia was struggling with her cancer. But again, she didn't complain. Olivia never liked talking about fighting her cancer. The nearest she would say was, "I'm trying to rid myself of something I don't want in my body." And I guess that towards the end, she just knew It was an uneven struggle that she couldn't win. On my 81st birthday, in October 2021, Olivia wrote me a lovely email. It could not have been more affecting. She said the sweetest things to me, the kind of things she and I had always known about each other but had left unsaid, and it really took me aback. Livy wrote, "You are such a special person and have meant so much to me in my life, both professionally and privately. I wanted to take a moment in your special day to tell you how grateful I am for your friendship and mentorship, to have known you for most of my life, and to call you my friend. Love you very much, Olivia." What an email to receive. I felt my tears welling up as I read it. I went to find my good friend John McKellen in the next room. "I've just had the loveliest email from Olivia," I said. "Let me tell you what she said." And John listened closely, and I read it to him. "She's saying goodbye, Cliff," he said. "What?" "She knows that she's going, and she's saying goodbye." Of course, as soon as John said that, I knew that he was right, and the realization was just heartbreaking. I freely confess that I was in tears, and I'm finding it hard to hold her back now. I called Olivia just 3 weeks before she died. When she picked up, I said hello to hear the gale of laughter, "G'day, Cliff," and the cheerful voice that followed. You'd have thought she was still in rude health. She was still the bubbly, joyous force of nature that she always was, that she had always been. She passed on 8th of August, 2022. I didn't get a phone call. I heard it on the TV news. The singer and actress, Oliva Newton-John, has died at the age of 73. I'd known it was coming, but it was still a devastating shock. I felt the kind of emptiness you only get when someone very special passes, when you lose a soulmate. Tanya, my personal assistant in London, phoned me up. "Cliff, the press and the media are all over us," she said. "They want a statement on Olivia's death." I knew that I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't look into a camera and talk about Olivia right now, I said. There is no way I'd get through it. Instead, I wrote something for my Facebook page. I found a photo of Olivia and me hugging each other when she came on stage with me at the Albert Hall on my 75th birthday to duet on Suddenly. It's a nice picture. We look so happy in it, and I wrote this. I find myself at a loss as to what to say. Death, well, he is a vicious enemy, and all of us will be taken by him. But all of us are not taken by him at the same time, and so, while Olivia remains in our minds and memories, she remains very much alive. I remembered how Livy had made music to help other cancer sufferers, and I paid tribute to how she had remained so upbeat as she endured the disease. I talked of our last phone conversation just 3 weeks earlier and how she had still been her bright, positive self. From now on, I shall only believe that our gorgeous Olivia simply stopped living. I will miss her. The world will miss her. So let's all keep her alive in our hearts and memories. God bless you, Livy. Rest in peace. John Travolta also paid Olivia a lovely tribute. He said, "My dearest Olivia, you made all of our lives so much better. Your impact was incredible. I love you so much. We will see you down the road again, and we will all be together again. Yours from the first moment I saw you, and forever, your Danny, your John." I thought that was beautiful when I read it. Olivia's family held a small private memorial service for her in California a few weeks after she died. The actress, Susan George, and I flew in for it from England. We were hoping to speak for a while about what she had meant to us, but the event was on a tight schedule, so we only got 30 seconds each. As you would expect, It was a very emotional gathering as we all said goodbye to Olivia. John Farrar read a tribute and he broke down halfway through and had a cry, before collecting himself and carrying on. Well, good for John. We all felt for him. It just demonstrated how much Olivia meant to all of us. I thought the tone of the gathering was a little more somber than Olivia would have liked, with her sense of fun, so I dug out my old joke. I asked her on my TV show. Then I couldn't get rid of the woman. Pat Carroll laughed. Thank goodness you made people laugh, she told me later. Livy would have liked that. I had hoped to sing one of the songs in this book at the service, Let It Be Me by the Everly Brothers, because, as I said, everybody who met her loved Olivia, men and women, so I thought it might be nice to sing it for her and to dedicate it to all the people in the world who had loved her throughout her career. Sadly, it was not to be. John Easterling, Olivia's husband, said he would rather I didn't, as it might be uncomfortable. I'm not sure if John had totally understood the reason that I wanted to do so. Well, I have to respect his wishes. He was her husband, and he was grieving, but I thought it was a shame. I was able to say a better farewell to Livy, though. I performed a tribute to her on my 2022 BBC Christmas TV special. I wanted to do it on Suddenly, and contemplated asking Kylie Minogue to sing it with me or Delta Goodrun, but neither of them were around. And then I had an even better idea. If I'm going to sing Suddenly, I thought it has to be with Olivia. And so we took her vocal from that duet we did at the Albert Hall on my 75th birthday, and I sang live with it. We showed footage from that 2015 night and from our 1980 video for the song, plus photographs going back 50 years of the two of us together. I have to admit, I'm still finding it difficult to get over losing Livy. It remains an awful shock. I still tear up when I think I'll never hear that cheery voice say, "G'day, Cliff," again. But one of the great things about being a Christian is that your faith sustains you. You know in your heart that death is not the end. We will meet again, I'm sure of it.